Alright, so today we are going to be removing and replacing the pilot bearing. Now this goes along with the clutch job pretty well. This is the new pilot bearing that I received and it goes right there. You don't need to remove the flywheel to do this job. So the Pelican way, the whole concept is you want to pull out the old one, right? So the way that Pelican parts tutorial says is you basically made this contraption that's a bolt with a nut that just barely fits inside of the inner hole, and then you grab a wrench and it's basically making your own slide hammer. So you brace it against one of the walls and then you just yank it. And this whole idea is you're supposed to edge it out, kind of like that, gradually. Well, this isn't even very gradual, but basically you're supposed to edge it out and then you change orientation and you get each edge out. This wasn't working whatsoever for me. I kept at this for a while and it just wasn't budging for me. So I moved on to an alternate strategy using bread. So before all that, basically you want to find a bolt that fits pretty well inside of that inner hole. I couldn't. Mine was just a tiny bit smaller, so what I did was I put electrical tape on mine to fill up the gap. As you can see here, it fits pretty well. So then I just gave it a test hit. Yep, seals it pretty well. And here's where the fun starts. So I'm gonna start shoving bread inside of the engine. I have these old sandwich buns, and although it might seem crazy, this actually works. So the basic concept is you get all this bread and you put as much of it into the engine as you can. And there's a tiny little enclosed pocket behind the pilot bearing, and you get as much bread as you can in there, and you use that screw that I was electrical taping earlier as a ram, as you'll see here, and you basically just ram the bread down into the groove behind the pilot bearing. Now what this does is the bread, with so much bread back there and it compacts and pushes, eventually all that pressure from the bread back there is going to push the pilot bearing out, even though the pilot bearing's in there real good. So as you can see here, I'm just adding bread, grabbing my tool, tapping it in. And I went at this for, 5 minutes. And then here I start to see the first development. It actually came out a little bit, which I was surprised that it actually worked. So I kept going at it. And as you can see here, it's actually pretty far out, like conceivably out. So it's working most definitely. And in this next one, it's almost out. So just keep adding more bread. And then when I looked again, it was gone. Pilot bearing was gone. So after a bit of confusion, I kind of didn't know where it went. So I looked around for a bit. Couldn't really believe it actually worked. It ended up just being on the actual bolt itself that it came out with, and there it is. The pilot bearing, which seemed very stuck in there, is just out. Kind of amazing. So and then all I did was I took a flathead and I got rid of the bread, obviously. Very interesting. It compacted into these very hard pieces that kept the shape pretty well. So I took them out and then I gave it a clean. I don't want to leave any bread inside my engine or anything like that, so I gave it a quick rub down to clean it out. And then what I did is I grabbed my new bearing. I'm putting it in dry. So I just got it kind of right there in the middle. Then I grabbed my dead blow mallet. Ow, that hurt. And then I just gave it a couple taps and Before you know it, it went right in. I mean, it it went right in. There we go. Uh, and just like that, I had a new pilot bearing, and this was, I hammered it and it was perfectly flush.